Well, here we are, episode 17 already on this series. And let me make myself more comfortable. Okay, see that clock up there? That is a Dutch Sansa clock. It used to be a lot more fancy than what you see right now. It had a tail on it, and I got it from a thrift store about 5 years ago, I guess. And when I got it, there was two things majorly wrong with it. First of all, it had been dropped, so the tail part of it, the lower part, was badly broken, and I cut that off. That's why it's the funny shape that it is. Second thing that was wrong is that it had a broken suspension spring for the pendulum. So I bought it because I knew I could fix it, and I did. But I never used the movement as I had originally planned. I thought I'd take the movement out and use it in something else, and I just never did, at least not yet. These are the decorations that came off of that clock. This would go on the top. These would have gone on the sides of the top. This would have hung on the bottom. And this thing here was on the very top, on the in the center. And what made me think of this morning is one of our YouTube friends sent me some pictures, 3 pictures. I'll show them to you later. And he also sent a video that I happened to see this morning. So I'll show you that link, or at least I'll tell you how you can easily find it, of his Frisian tail clock, a genuine Frisian tail clock, an antique, probably very valuable. It's got beautiful wood back, some kind of burl. Well, you'll see it. Anyway, what else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, messages. If you send me a message in Facebook, I may not see it. The message that was about this particular clock, I didn't see it for several days, and I apologize for that. You know, Canadians are always saying I'm sorry. Well, I'm a Canadian and I'm saying I'm sorry. As well as we say a lot. Yeah. So the other thing I want to mention is a couple or 3 viewers were talking about these pocket hole screws and how they're self-tapping. Well, I want to give you my view on these screws. You know, how this one is more for hardwood and this one is for softwood. Well, I kind of knew that, even though I didn't know it was an official thing. I could just tell by looking at them which would work the best. And I did know about this deal that they're kind of self-tapping. And I'm just going to say kind of, because in my opinion, they're not 100% self-tapping. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, so we'll go upstairs, we'll put the macro lens on, have a nice close look. I don't know what else I can tell you down here other than we're probably not going to be working on this thing too much. You notice it's still holding together. One of the viewers mentioned that he thought it'd be a good idea, or would have been a good idea, had I drilled the centering hole at a bit of an angle. And I did think about that. You know, I thought, yeah, you know, that might work, but I chose to go straight down. And as it's turning out, I think it's going to be okay. I'll know when I drill the other 3 holes. Yeah, so I think that's all I can tell you from down here. Let's go upstairs, put on the macro lens, and have a close look at these, and I'll explain why I think they're not 100% self-tapping. In other words, why did I drill a pilot hole in here? Or, you know, if these are self-tapping, why drill the hole? That's the idea. Well, I'll explain why. Let's go upstairs. Now, before we actually go over to the model table and take a close look at these screws, I want to show you these pictures that Jim sent. And I just saw them this morning for the first time. Now, also he sent a video link. Now, if you want to see this video, you look for this. and you click on this link, and you'll see it actually a little clearer than the pictures. Now, there's another YouTube friend of ours that his name is Will, and Will collects these clocks. He probably knows more about these clocks than the rest of us all put together. And Will, I imagine you may have seen this already. And what do you think? Is this a valuable clock, or is it just me that thinks it's valuable? And how old do you think it is? It'd be really interesting to hear from somebody that knows. Yeah. Now let's go look at the screws. Our manual is still open where we left off just over 2 weeks ago. I guess I should have closed it up. It's getting a little bit dusty. But at least I have the smarts to know to cover up the deck here. And this is just saran wrap. And as you will remember, some of the parts are so delicate that this saran wrap will break them if I'm not careful. So I'm being careful. Anyway, let's get our macro lens on here and have a little look-see, nice and close. And we'll talk about what I was talking about. Now, those of you who have watched a lot of my videos where I use the macro lens, I have a bad habit of poking at stuff. So I can almost guarantee you that I'm going to want to be poking at this, and it's going to roll away, and I'm going to say, don't worry, we'll get it yet, and stuff like that. So, hence the tape. So when I poke at it, well, they stay in place. Now, both of these screws have been used before. And in fact, you can quite readily see some of the wood still in the fine-grained screw here. And what I'm trying to point out here is that when it builds up like that, and this one here, it was completely built up all the way along, where do you think that wood goes after it fills up? You know, in other words, after the screw has gone maybe, a quarter of an inch into the wood or so. Where do you think that wood goes? Well, it stays there, and it just gets more and more compacted. And consequently, it's no longer really what you would call threading the rest of the hole. So it's spreading the wood. And if it's spreading the wood, well, it's going to have a tendency to crack it. Now, that's my opinion, and I could be wrong. And it's real obvious that the fine grain or fine thread screw is smaller in diameter, so excuse me, it's going to have less of a chance of cracking the wood. But then on the other hand, because there are more threads involved, well, I don't know. Does the one cancel out the other? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, so anyway, that's my opinion. That yes, they're good. Yes, they're better, especially for starting. You have no trouble getting a screw like this started. But when it goes in more than half an inch, well, I think it's probably apt to crack the wood just as much as an ordinary screw. And if you take and drill the hole out first. Oh, and by the way, when I drill the hole, I always drill it so it is just slightly larger than the actual shaft of the screw, without the threads. That's the way I do it anyway, and it's always worked for me. I don't think I can ever remember having something that crack unless it was in a real bad place already. If I have taken the time to drill it out first, it doesn't crack. Somebody else might say, well, I haven't drilled it out and I use a screw like that and it doesn't crack. So I guess it's whatever works for you. But anyway, that's my opinion, and I could be wrong. Now, for those of you who are camera buffs, and I know there's a few of you out there, you might think to yourself, I think Ron's moved in just a little closer than he normally does. Well, I did. What I did was I put on my extension tubes. They go between the macro lens here and the body of the camera. And it just moves the lens a little bit further away from the sensor, which, well, we don't need to go into a bunch of details, but it makes it look a little bit bigger. However, I don't know if you've also noticed, it's not quite as sharp. Yes, it's bigger, especially if you're watching this on your cell phone, it'll definitely look better. But if you're watching it on a 4K monitor, well, the one sort of cancels out the other. Anyway, I think that's it for today. So once again, thanks for watching, and all being well, we'll see you tomorrow.